Hello, all you party people. Welcome to another shocking edition of ARG Presents. I'm your boy, your good buddy, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who would love to play 4-player games if only he could find 3 other friends. So sad. I give you the Brent.
Actually, I would rather just have 4 friends and just watch them play.
Oh, there you go. This may be why you don't have the friends right there, because of your horrible, stupid attitude. So, Brent, how's it going this week?
I had to do the double ear protection this week.
Oh, my God.
Those racing trucks, man, they're loud.
What is that? Is that what you've got going on over there? It looks like your head is slowly widening, which does make some sense given your ego. So, Brent showed off the new headphones. They look good. Show them the retractable gimmick.
Well, I'm afraid if I pop it out, the mic, Skype will stupidly think that's the mic it wants to use.
Gosh. Well, it's still,
but it's up in here, hidden away.
Looking good. If only you could get a new face. Me too, I guess. So, last week, holy smokes, it was a happening, Brent. If you didn't join us, we didn't spin the wheel last week. Well, we did, but we did make the big, huge 8-hour deal. It all went down at the Thanks for Giving Marathon, Brent. 8 consecutive uninterrupted hours of incredibly hot ARG action, including 4 straight hours of the most cutting-edge remote gaming you ever did see, and several shows sprinkled in along the way. Some good times. You've had a week to digest it, Brett. What are your thoughts on how the Thanks for Giving Marathon went down this year?
When the show opened and we immediately had problems behind the scenes, I knew we were in for a good one. But everyone seemed to enjoy it. We had a lot of people show up, had a lot of people enjoying the entertainment, and we got to play some fun games and sprinkled in some retro arch cutting edge action there. So I thought it was a good time. Good time had by all.
It was beyond the cutting edge because it could have failed at any moment.
What are you talking about? It failed at every moment.
For those, you couldn't see behind the scenes, but as we started the very first minute of the show, the 3 previous minutes had been wondering why Retro Arch would not work at all, and the entire show hinged on us playing it for many, many hours. So we were up against it. That's for darn sure. But we had a good time. We had a lot of fun, actually. I mean, with the exception of that, it went pretty smooth, and we did squeeze 4 hours, straight up 4 hours of retro gameplay on Retro Arch on Steam. If you are interested in going back and reliving the magic, or you haven't seen it, you can check us out on our YouTube channel, the Amigos Retro Gaming channel. We do, in fact, have a condensed 4-hour block of gameplay. We also have, you can watch the festivities in their entirety on Twitch, which it's available whenever you want. Now, so much for that. At the end of that show, Brent, we did spin the wheel, as we are wont to do. We did make the exciting deal. And this week, my friend, we will be playing games of the 4-player variety. 4-player, not the Horseman this time, but straight up 4 people can play these games, Brent. There were some interesting choices here. There were a lot of games that are 4-player specialities. There's plus just games that have up to 4 players. Would you play a multiplayer game like this? What do you look for? I mean, what tickles your fancy in a 4-player game, Brent?
Well, I actually play a 4-player game of the modern era stuff every Wednesday with our gaming group, and we really, we want something that is engaging, something we can put several weeks into, something where you can grow a character type thing, which in the 4-player era of retro gaming, that does happen, but not nearly as much as it does nowadays. Multiplayer gaming has really come in its own in the last, say, 10 years. Especially with the advent of internet play, and it really allows you to stretch the horizon of what's possible on multiplayer gaming. I mean, look at MMOs. I guess they're 30 years out at this point from their inception, where you've got hundreds of players going. So when you look back, you've got the gamut of single player games and 2-player games, all the way up to these 100-player massive, or thousands of players massive games. And now we're starting to condense things back down. You'll see a lot of games that come anymore that are co-op focused, especially, seem to focus right in that 4-player range.
You know, I'm old school, as you know. I like some good old 4-player arcade action. And there have been a ton of great ones. It's funny, as I was thinking as I was putting this together, what 4-player, and less games that I dug over the years. And just the ones that come up to my head immediately are games like WrestleFest, games like NBA Jam, games that are fighting games, or beat 'em ups, like like say The Simpsons, or something like an X-Men, which is, I think it was X-Men came in flavors of 2, 4, and is that 8? Or was there a 6 in there? I can't remember. It's funny,
I don't recall a 6.
We owned an X-Men game, and that player amount is basically hardwired into the board. So effectively, you have to get different boards for different player levels. A little something there. I thought that was stupid. Your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Cowboys and Moon Mesa. I like those kind of games. When you get 4 players involved in a beat 'em up, it actually takes the beat 'em up to a more fun level. Beat 'em ups, if you just go there by yourself, it's not even close to as much fun, is it? You get 4 people in there, you're having a good time crowded around an arcade machine. That's good stuff.
I do agree that for beat 'em ups, more players enhance the game, but also beat 'em ups, you almost feel like, outside of fighting up the bosses and whatnot, you almost feel like you're kind of doing your own thing, because of course they add more enemies, which means you are fighting your guy and your buddies are fighting their guy. When you expand it a little bit, maybe have, like The Simpsons, you were able to do team attacks.
Yeah,
I thought that was a better use of the 4-player environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I liked I like games where you can team up, but it's also neat when you're playing a 4-player game and you're competing to a certain degree against other players. And I'll use the gauntlets, for example, where you're vying for power-ups and food, which a lot of them are like that. But Gauntlet's the first one. I think Gauntlet maybe, I'm trying to think, Gauntlet was one of the first 4-player games of that variety. We're gonna talk about a 4-player game today that predates Gauntlet by a good ways. But Gauntlet was sort of like really set the tone for what those sorts of games are going to be like in a lot of ways, the beat 'em ups and whatnot. And it was a quarter sucking machine, so clearly it worked. Yeah. And why not suck the quarters out of 4 people instead of just 1 or 2? It was a brilliant strategy. What about the home market? I mean, you mentioned MMOs. Were there any home like PC or console 4-player games that tickled your fancy? I could think of a couple just right off the top of my head. One would be Worms. We used to play Worms on the Dreamcast like ad nauseum, and there's nothing better than a 4-player game of that, getting a bunch of your buddies together and going to war with them. I always enjoyed that one. What about you? What kind of 4-player home action did you get into?
Well, when I was in college, I lived in a fraternity house for some amount of time, and we would do N64 4-player games. GoldenEye being one of the tops. We also did Mario Tennis, Mario Kart. So a lot of those games, racing games, and 4-player split screen, and tennis was a huge hit when we were playing it back in the day. So those type of games, anything where you're in direct competition in that type of environment, very therapeutic, among other things.
It's funny. So many of the consoles began shipping with 4-player joystick ports in there, and that sort of became the sweet spot, right? Your Xbox had it, your Dreamcast had it, several others. I think the N64 had it. A GameCube. I mean, on down the line, 4 players was the sweet spot. It's always fun to play with a bunch of people. Something like Bomberman, which is not my bag, but I know it's sort of the perennial multiplayer game that's been around for like 1,000 years. I believe on the Saturn, you could have up to like 10 players, or some ludicrous amount. Like it was like a ridiculous amount of players. So it's kind of neat to see those kind of multiplayer games where you can really pile it on. But I think it gets a little bit too confusing when you get too many people. I think 4 is, it's just like I said, it's about the sweet spot for these suckers. So, with all that said, I'll have to say, Brent, we sort of inadvertently both took a different approach this week to the 4-player games that we chose. Both are absolutely, they fit the bill, but they're not beat 'em ups. Or puzzle games or anything like that. They're a little something different, man. I was pretty happy with both of our selections. I thought they were a little bit outside the box. I will go ahead and lead the charge this week.
All right.
I really pondered this quite a bit. Because some of my favorite games, like I said, are 4-player games. Your WrestleFest, a lot of wrestling games, a lot of home wrestling games. The N64. Wrestling scene, the No Mercies and the WCW games and whatnot. And plus you've got the multi-tap games in the PlayStation. There are plenty of good 4-player games, 4-player sports games. But I went back, I sat down and I thought to myself, what was the most fun 4-player games that I ever played that were simple and were, kind of old? I was in that mood, And so what I went with, man, was an old school classic, a stone classic, I may say, and that was Warlords, the arcade version of Warlords. And we'll get into the console versions as well. But Warlords is a game that has been around just since the dawn of time. And it's one that, it was a game that was great when it came out. It was based on another great game, and then got better as it got released at home. So it actually had it's still growing in a certain degree. So Warlords was a game that debuted in arcades in 1980, Brent. This was an offering.
Way back.
Yeah, way back. This was an offering from Atari. And Atari, really, of course, Atari was really cranking them out back in the day. A lot of great classic hits. And one of their first early hits was your Pong-style games. Your Pong. And Pong sort of graduated into sort of a multiplayer Pongs, and then that sort of graduated into a breakout sort of game. So what the natural progression of those games was what Warlords is, which is a sort of effectively a multiplayer breakout game. Atari had developed a string of hits, and they had developed a lot of good multiplayer stuff, your sprints and whatnot back in the day. So they had a good idea of how to make it work, and this was early in the game, and they already knew that adding extra players meant more money. And so Atari, they liked that sweet, sweet cash. So again, released in the arcades in 80. This came in 2 different flavors, Brent. You had an upright version of this, which sadly is the only one I've ever played. The upright version was black and white, and it had a color overlay. This was something that was pretty standard back in the day. That was the way they did it. They used to have a lot of black and white games with a color overlay. Then you also had the much cooler looking cocktail variety. The cocktail variety had 4-player support, whereas the upright one only had 2 players. 4 players is where you get your groove on in this game. It's funny, I was looking up the numbers on this thing. Atari actually pretty much almost split the 2 different types right down the middle. So, get this. This surprised me because the numbers are actually kind of low. According to their production numbers, they produced 1,014 upright Warlord cabinets and 1,253 cocktails. So, they only produced, it was less than 2,500 of these cabinets were ever released. Does that surprise you, that number?
That's pinball level numbers. That's really low for a mass release.
It is really low. I was surprised. When this game was in production, originally it was called Castles and Kings, and it had a huge cocktail cabinet. It was the cabinet was so big that they ended up having to the size reduce it, because one of the problems with a game like this is that you have 4 people crowded around it if you've got the cocktail version, and so
it's a lot of floor space.
Yeah, you've got to devote. I mean, really, you have to devote. I will say this: if you put a game like this in your arcade, you're going to have to produce 4 games worth of money out of it to make up for the size. That's one of the downfalls of a game like this, is that you can't do anything about it because you've got people crowded around it. And there's sprint series and stuff for the same thing. Now, these games featured one button per player and a rotary control. The rotary control is, or as later on, it would be a paddle if you played this on like the 2600, where this thing was absolutely necessary for a game like this. And I've got to say, Atari with these spinners, they did a real good job. These were good quality spinners. They felt good, and their home versions were pretty good as well. I really enjoyed it. Of course, you've got one button there. We'll get into why here in a minute. Now, here's something I looked up just for fun. So we've all played Warlords, and I'll sum up the gameplay in Warlords real quick. In 4 separate corners of the screen, you've got a castle, and which is made of bricks, and inside the castle is a warlord, a symbol, effectively. And this game starts off with a dragon that flies in the middle of the screen. He breathes a fireball, and that fireball will ricochet all around the screen. Your only defense to keep the fireball from hitting and destroying some of the bricks on your castle is a shield. Presumably there's a man with a shield on the outside of the castle running like a maniac around the walls, which I do like the thought of that. And so as you use the rotary dial, you will physically move that man around the castle. And the rotary was there to be, because you needed that sort of precise control over your character, because that ball could whip around quick. Having played this without without that rotary control, it's a much more difficult game. Even with a mouse or an analog stick, it's just not the same as having the rotary controller. So once a fireball comes near you and you ricochet it, you also have the ability to hit the button and grab the fireball. And once you've grabbed the fireball, you can position yourself in such a way as that you can control where the fireball shoots off. So effectively, at this point, instead of being sort of a random game where you're protecting yourself, now Warlords has become a game where you can target other players. And that's the magic of Warlords, because deals are made, deals are broken in Warlords. You can purposely go after one guy repeatedly. You can just send the thing careening, or you can not even use the button at all if you don't want to, but I don't know anyone that does that. And the first person, if you're playing two players, the first person whose warlord gets killed loses. If you're playing in 4 players, depending on the number of players, if you're playing by yourself in 4 players, when you get knocked out, you're gone. If you're playing with 4 people, it's just whoever's last is the winner. So the games are pretty hot and fast. Eventually, in the arcade version, a second fireball can appear. Normally, if you kill a warlord, another fireball will appear. And sometimes, if the game's stretching on, it will just appear anyway. And so you could have several fireballs careening around the screen, which was, I have to say, hadn't played this in the arcade that much. That was kind of a surprise to me to have that much action. It gets real hot and heavy.
Well, and it makes sense too, right?
Yeah, it does.
Because you've killed someone. Now you don't want that person to leave the machine. You want that person to wait for the next game and play again.
Yeah.
So more fireballs equals game end faster. So every warlord that dies, new fireball comes out. Game will end faster, then everyone can put their money back in and play again.
Let's talk about the presentation real quick in the arcade. Like I said, I've only played the upright version, which is black and white. But I have to say, Atari were very good with these overlays, weren't they?
Viva La Raza.
Yeah, thank you, Conan. But I mean, they do look good, don't they? They do a good job with the overlays. Cocktail also looks good. I mean, I think I like the ingenuity that these classic arcade manufacturers came up with in terms of overlays. I always thought that was a cool, and it works. I mean, it really gives you the illusion of color and texture that graphically they could never have done on a black and white monitor in the 80s. Your thoughts?
Yeah, overlays are something that's very overlooked, and they're tough. I mean, you can emulate what an overlay looks like, but you can't really get the feel. It's much different when you see an overlay in person. The shimmer to it, the luminosity of it all. It's something that, when used correctly, is an incredible effect, even really beyond graphics. Certainly graphics at the time, but even the graphics of today, some of the depth that they get with overlays is just amazing.
Do you find it odd that they would put? It's odd to me that they would put. They would give the cocktail the color monitor, and why would they? Why do you think they differentiated?
I would imagine the cocktail just came out after the fact. Plus, I mean, you want 4 people to play your cocktail, you make it look more impressive.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure it does. I mean, looked at footage of both. I mean, they both look cool.
Oh, I think it does. I think it looks nice.
It is strange to me that they manufacture them like that, but so be it. So just for fun, because I've played this for years, I don't know if you knew this, but there's a backstory for this. Have you ever heard the backstory?
No, I don't think I have.
Allow me to. I pulled this out of the Atari 2600 owner's manual. All right, but this is kind of neat. And believe it or not, they actually fairly well tell what's going on. So if you'll indulge me, I am quoting from the owner's manual. Once long ago in a distant land lived a king named Frederick. He took very good care of his subjects and pretty much let the kingdom run itself. That's my kind of king. One day, King Frederick and his wife, Queen Christina, decided to start a family. To their surprise, Queen Christina soon gave birth to quadruplets. That's what is that the pronunciation, quadruplets? I
think it's well, I don't know.
4 healthy sons all at once. The king and queen were overwhelmed.
Yeah, I bet.
So the kids' names were Dominic, Marcus, Felipe, and Restivo. They grew to be young, strong men, but they were nothing like their peaceful father. They were just the opposite. The 4 sons of the king fought constantly over anything and everything. Their fighting was so fierce that the even normally unconcerned Frederick became concerned. It's the way it's written. That's well said. Left to his violent and competitive sons, his peaceful kingdom could well be destroyed after he was gone, or perhaps sooner. The solution, King Frederick decided, was drastic, but he knew it had to be. Dominic, Marcus, Felipe, and Restiva were banished from their homeland and sent away to a forbidden land. There, they became warlords, dividing their newly acquired territory into 4 equal sections, which, incidentally, was the first and last thing they ever agreed on. Then they took to building their own castles, after which the battling resumed and never ended. They stopped catapulting fireballs and lightning balls, which are in the home version, at one another long enough to rebuild their damaged and war-torn castles. After the repairs were made, the fighting always began again with renewed ferocity. So King Frederick's warlords have been battling for centuries now. It's up to you to carry on their long-standing feud. So that's what you're doing in this game. You're carrying on the feud. Dominic, Marcus, Felipe, and Restivo have been locked inside the game program. They've stored enough fireballs and lightning bolts so they never run out, and neither will you. They can hardly wait to battle. So good luck. You're a fierce competition. I love that. They lock these warlords in the game cartridge. That's my kind of weapons grade baloney right there. I love that.
That is.
That's good stuff.
That's some good cheese.
Oh yeah. So Warlords, I guess you could say, was fairly successful. Again, I don't know what a quality run of an arcade machine in 1980 was. I mean, 1980 was early on before most of the huge hits. I mean, clearly this wasn't on the level of like a Space Invaders or anything, but it's hard to gauge exactly how successful it was. But it was well received, that's for sure. Amongst other things, it won our favorite award, Brent. It won the award for Best Pong Variant. If you believe it or not, that was an award. And it got an honorable mention for Best Competitive Game at the 3rd Annual Arky Awards, which are, if anyone has videotape of an Arky presentation, I would love to see it. It also, of course, got its own home cartridge, which did very, very well. In 2009, Game Informer ranked it the 25th best video game of all time. They called it the original. I think that's being
a little generous.
They called it the original trash-talking 4-player company. I don't disagree with that. I'm right there with it. I think this is an all-time. It has never been done better, and it's the 4-player game. I'm not sure there's any game that you could say was better than this in terms of getting everybody fired up and invested in the gameplay, in my opinion. It also appeared in the 1001 video games that you must play before you die. It was named number 78 in the top 100 video games of all time by Flux Magazine, and Game Informer called it number 25 of the top video games of all time. And it was on a poll, and it was named number 8 on the top 25 Atari 2600 games of all time. So those are pretty good accolades, Brentster, in terms of its popularity, its lasting effect on video games. This game's been brought to the home many, many times. I made a little list here of all the places this thing's appeared. So get this. Of course, you had the Atari arcade version, the 2600 version. This game was on the PlayStation, the GBA, the Dreamcast, the Xbox, PlayStation 2, the N-Gage, the Nintendo DS, Windows, the PSP, Xbox Live had like a version of it. The PlayStation Network. It's been on iOS and Android. This is a game it's been around the block. Brent, what are your memories of playing Warlords? Do you remember when you first saw it, and do you remember playing this on the 2600? What's your opinion? Let's have it.
I don't like it.
You're kidding me? Are you serious?
No, just like Pong and Arkanoid and all these types of games, it just doesn't appeal to me. And it's not that it's a bad game. I'm certainly not saying that. It has some incredible design elements that are really noteworthy. For example, when you capture a fireball, if you just sit there and hold it, it spins on your shield, and the sparks actually damage your own castle. That's a good way to keep the game moving. That's very well thought out by the developers. But Arkanoid games, Pong games, these things just don't do it for me. Even when you've got multiple people sitting around, I never feel like I have the level of control that I want. And even with being able to capture the ball, that certainly helps. This is probably one of my favorite Pong / Arkanoid / Breakout type of games. I do wish there was some kind of power-up system, but I understand they've already got a lot going on. Just not my thing, man. It never has been. These games, just the Breakout things, have no appeal to me.
You know, I really am surprised to hear you say that. And by surprised, I mean you're dumb. Because this is an all-time classic. And
I didn't say it was a bad game.
Calling this a Pong
I just said
game,
was it a game I enjoyed. There's a difference there.
This isn't... yes, this is Pong-esque. But, I mean, there's so much more going on.
It's more Breakout to me than Pong.
But, I mean, the elements of being able to team up with people, the ability to use the Power Stone button to capture the fireball and shoot it in different directions. I mean, I love you. Have you played? Maybe you haven't played enough of this in a multiplayer element.
I've played it plenty. It's just these type of games don't appeal to me. You can't be like, oh, Brent, your opinion's wrong. I'm not saying this game sucks. It's the worst thing ever. It's just not a game that appeals to me. I think the design elements of it are fine. I think the graphics are incredible for the time period. And I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying it is not a game that I personally enjoy.
Brent, your opinions are wrong. I can't say it. I just did. I did look up some reviews on this. The All Gamers Guide in '98 gave this an 80%. The Atari Times, which is pretty reputable, in 2014 gave this an 80, and they said it would have gotten it higher, but it stinks with one player. Which I will say the computer, when you play this as a 4-player version, this with one player, the computer just beats the tar out of you relentlessly. They're not kind with the beat down that goes on. But overall, I will say I've always thought this was a real fun game, and I really enjoyed it. And I do think it's one of the all-time great games of all the times of all the video games.
I wouldn't even put it in my top 100.
It's an all-time. I mean, if you look at the all-time great multiplayer games, this was like this. In some ways, this does remind me of Worms, not in gameplay, but in just the feeling you get, and the hate you have, and the love you have, the alliances you make and break. That's what's great about it.
And if you're gonna narrow down the list to say the 100 top multiplayer games of all time, okay, maybe it makes the list then. But top 100 games of all time.
Listen, do you put Breakout or Pong on your top 100 games of all time?
I would probably put Arkanoid.
And see,
because Arkanoid.
I like Arkanoid, but this is better. I'm sorry.
Well, Arkanoid took the concept and really expanded on it. I mean, the power-ups and the different types of blocks and the enemies that come on screen. I think that really advanced the genre to something to appeal to people both who love that type of game and who don't like that type of game. That's why I will sit down and occasionally play Arkanoid, even though it would certainly not be my first choice.
Listen, that's
why I think that game deserves higher praise than this, because while this is innovative, not denying that for the time, it's not innovative enough to me.
Well, I disagree. I do like, don't get me wrong, I like Arkanoid and Revenge of Doe. I think they're great games, but they're totally different games than this. This is a 4-player party game and one of the best, and like I said, in my opinion. I will say most of my experience with this was the 2600 version, which again, it was sort of before your time in a lot of ways. We used to play the crap out of this. You get yourself some paddles. Of course, the paddles, you could have 2 paddles per joystick port. So this is 4 players at home. And this was great. And it was one of the few games you could play 4 players back in those days. It was just a lot of fun. We did not get any Discord action on this one. I did look this up on the eBay real quick before we move along. So get this. There were no arcade cabinets for sale, and none had sold. Like I said, these are pretty rare, so I'm not terribly surprised by that. I thought I found one, but someone was selling reproduction glass. The glass alone on the cocktail version was $255, which that's high dollar.
That's insane for reproduction.
Well, it was top quality, but you got to think how many of these things how many times you're going to come across arcade cocktail glass from 1980 that's going to be in good shape. It's probably pretty rare. I've got an arcade machine cocktail from before 1980, and the glass is in rough shape. I know what it goes. You can get the marquee for $15 US. You can get the sealed Atari cartridge. If you want to play it on the 2600, you can get it for $25. I would recommend if you get it for the 2600, you've got to have paddles. There is no joysticks. And want to play some paddle. The flyer, the arcade flyer, which is pretty cool looking, is $15. So that stuff's out there. If you want to get the actual arcade machine, good luck, pal.
And I would highly recommend. This is a game that I would not recommend someone load up alone to play.
Yeah.
You're certainly not going to get where the fun of the game is alone. Yeah. But if you've got a couple people sitting around, I would highly recommend. This is something that I would find a way to acquire or play one way or another if you've got a group of people interested in this type of game.
Yeah, because alone, effectively, it is competitive breakout. That's what it shines in multiplayer, and so that is part of the rub. So there you go, Warlords, again, one of my all-time faves. So Brent, let's move on. You went outside the box here in a big way, and you puzzled us for a little while, but you're very shrewd and cunning on your selection this week. What do you got for us?
I took the arcade 3-player classic Iron Man Stewarts Super Off-Road and kicked it up a notch for the 4-player NES version. Yes, the only version that you can play of this game that is 4-player is on the Nintendo Entertainment System with the multi-tap.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? I had no idea about this until you mentioned it.
And I think that one of the reasons why the Nintendo version got away with this was it was released a year later than most of the other ports. And I think it needed something to stand out. Plus, this was during the era where pushing the multi-tap wasn't the worst idea in the world. So the two things come together at the right time. So I'm just going to call this Super Off-Road from here on out. The Iron Man Stewart title was eventually dropped for a lot of the later releases due to copyrights. And if you don't know who Iron Man Stewart is, he is a truck racing circuit god. Back from the 70s. He's still alive today. He raced for like almost 3 decades and won everything you can imagine winning. One of the best, certainly one of the most memorable in the sport.
It must be gratifying for him because everyone on Earth that plays video games know his name. You know, all the
Yeah.
retro gamers. And I don't know jack squat. I couldn't name another truck driver, you know, with BJ the Bear. That's it. I don't know. So this guy, he's a very
Different
lucky
type of
man.
truck, Aaron.
I mean, even with skateboarding, like I know more than just Tony Hawk, but Dave
Yeah.
Iron Man Stewart, this is his baby, man. He's immortalized.
And he is literally he knew what he was doing. Not only was he incredible at his chosen sport, but he was a showman and a talker and knew how to play the game. That's why he's got his own video game.
He was a showman.
Speaking of which, huh?
He's like, was he real charismatic? I mean, I've never
Well,
even seen him.
He
except
was
for this
charismatic.
game. Okay.
Yeah. He was also he had either he was a smart businessman or he had a smart businessman working for him. I'm not sure which. But this got ported to a billion different systems. I just want to run down them real quick. Of course, you've got the arcade release, and then you've got the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, the Atari ST, the Commodore 64, DOS release, Game Boy, Game Gear, Linux, Master System, Genesis, NES, Super NES, ZX Spectrum. Also, there have been ports for a variation of this game in the Xbox Live Arcade, and there was going to be a Jaguar port, but they pulled it at the last second. So this is a game that has spanned, I mean, that's a lot of generations of consoles and computers. Plus, it is a wide variety of success and failure stories. The Linux port of this is the absolute worst trash I've ever seen. Somehow they've taken a simple concept and completely ruined it. Some of the portables couldn't have all of this track on one screen, so you've got it scrolling around. You know, you got to do it, right? But the Linux version is like literally, it's like 7 or 8 frames a second. It's absolutely dreadful. Other successful ports of this, the Amiga port is really good. Of course, the Super Nintendo incorporated more tracks, and that's something they actually did in the arcade for this game as well. They had a track pack, which was an additional PCP that attaches to the device that opens up 8 more tracks. And some of the later consoles, like the Super Nintendo, were able to get those tracks at home. So, but that's not what we're here for. We are here for the NES version because it does one thing that no other version, not even the original version, can do, and that's play 4-player simultaneous with the NES Satellite or the NES 4-Score, which for those that don't know is an adapter that you hook into your Nintendo to take your 2 controller ports and expand them to 4 controller ports. This was not a successful add-on. There are only a handful of games that support it. And this is really one of the most notable because it actually expands on the original idea of the arcade version. So in Super Off-Road, you drive a truck around a stationary course. It's a one-screen course. And it's sort of like Sprint, if you're familiar with that. And its claim to fame is it's not flat surfaces. You've got these dirt piles and jumps and these tight turns, and it's just complete madness. It has tracks that are in X's where you have to pass through each other as you're traveling around. It's got other courses where you have to weave in and out of the track, and it all boils down to the most impressive upgrade system. Also, the first upgrade system to actually use money as its upgrade component. You could upgrade your truck and buy nitrous, and that is the only other button on this cabinet is the nitrous button, which allows you to kick your car into high gear for a momentary burst of speed that sends your truck flying across the screen. And if you do it in a corner, you just fly right in the wall. There's no saving it, and then you have to kind of hobble back from your 0 speed to get going again. In the arcade, this was absolute madness. It had a steering wheel on it that had no left or right extremes. You could just spin the thing endlessly. And it was awesome. In the home version of this, especially in the Nintendo, they capture some of that feel. Of course, they can't capture the steering wheel spinning feel, but they can capture that great nitrous action where you hit the nitrous and your truck just goes flying. Now, Aaron, I know you've played this in the arcade because I've played it with you, but have you ever played the NES version before this week?
I had not played the NES version, I have to say. I have not played it until this week.
What did you think about it?
It's not good, frankly. In fact, it's the worst I've played, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Now,
so you don't know what gaming is.
Hear me out.
Gotcha.
Hear me out. I love Iron Man Stewarts Off-Road. I love it.
Super off-road. Get it right and show it.
My bad. It's super. I love it in the arcade. There's nothing better than getting in one of those 3 steering wheel cabinets with your buddies. I remember doing this at arcade party we were at. I've done it. My buddy actually owned this, and sitting around. In fact, I had 2 of my local arcade buddies that owned. Each had one of these because they're so popular. And even today, this is a money maker. It always was.
Yeah,
it's a simple concept. The upgrade thing is fun because you get your new engines, new tires if you play it long enough. They've got the bikini girl there holding the trophy, whole 9 yards. It's got a great fun. It's in some ways it's a lot like a Warlords. This is the kind of game which is crazy madness. You're having a good time. You're screaming. It's fun. It's quick. I will say the Nintendo, the NES version looks good. It sounds okay. It comes up. You've got the 4 players. All that stuff's great. In fact, everything about this is great except for the actual game. The game. One thing about Super Off-Road is when you play it, you actually are. It's a crazy madcap race. You're hauling tail. You're hitting those turbo buttons, and your car literally flies across the screen like it got shot out of a cannon. And that's what makes the game fun. Despite the fact that you're going to hit some off-road obstacles along the way, you're moving at a good clip. And for the most part, you just kind of rumble them over. In the NES version, this road, I don't know what they did to this particular track, but it literally cut your speed in half. I mean, you go super slow across this thing. It's nonstop, jacked up path in front of you. And what that does effectively is it slows the game down. I mean, if you're watching the game footage here, you can see, look at these cars. Like, if you watch the arcade version of this, these things are whipping around like mad. Like, it's crazy. In the Nintendo version, it's just incredibly slow. Now, I have a theory behind it. My theory is the Nintendo could not push 4 players at the arcade speed. And so what they did was they just basically made it so the track slowed you down like you wouldn't believe. And I thought, well, maybe it's because later on you really get going quicker when you upgrade, and they've just made the slope a little bit more, sleeper. No, I played this for a good while, and you never really get going any quicker than this. Something else I don't like is the sound, because they've actually programmed into the sound to make it sound like you're driving on gravel or something. This sound sucks. It's just
the sound is bad.
The sound effects are. It's not because the sound itself is horrible. It's fine. It's just that you hear it so much.
Yeah.
I'm always amused when you hear tires skidding and stuff with dirt. And so I call that's an Ed Wood special, and a lot of old directors that would have a car slamming the brakes in the middle of the desert, and you'd hear that screech of the tires. I always thought that was funny. But I mean, this is like if you took Dave Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road and like put it on the moon or somewhere or maybe Indianapolis, where the roads are so destroyed that you can't actually build up any speed. And that's the point of the game, is to go fast. It's too slow. I've played a lot of the other versions. Of course, I've played the Amiga version extensively. And this I don't think I've ever played one that was like this. I was surprised, frankly. I wanted to love it, but I don't love it. I didn't like it at all.
I am stunned at how inaccurate your description is. I'm wondering if we played the same game.
Oh, we did.
Because the game is plenty fast. It leaves... Now, your basic pace of driving around is slower than the arcade. I'm not going to deny that.
Oh, yeah.
But when you hit the nitrous button, and later in the game, after about track, I don't know, 20, and your car is fully upgraded, and then all you have to spend your money on is more nitrous, you eventually get to the point where you nitrous 90% of the tracks. I like when you're going around it. And when you nitrous in this game, the boost of speed feels incredibly good. Incredibly good.
Yeah, because you've been going so slow for so long. It's like, oh boy.
Well, but that's the thing. From track, I don't know how long you play it. I'm going to assume that you only played it like 5 or 6 tracks. Because
I played this quite a bit. Hey, you don't have to
when you get
convince
to
me
about
to play
track 20, and you're just nitrosing continuous all the way around the track, and you're flying off these jumps, and the speed is ridiculous. Ridiculous. It's over the top ridiculous how fast they push the nitrous. So the speed on this is I don't know how you can dispute it. When you first turn on the game and you have no upgrades and you're on track 1, the game is slow, and it's supposed to be slow because it's trying to let you learn how to play. But by race 14 or 15, you should be fully upgraded, and by race 20, you should have 99 nitros, and you're just flying down the track. Mach 10, no stopping, and your truck's bouncing over the place, and you still have to be strategic about it because you can't just nitrous into a corner because you're just going to hit the wall and you're going to skid out of control. But if you have everything, once you get the rhythm of it, I think I raced to I think I lost at track 35.
Wow, I didn't get that far. That's pretty good.
And that was because I got cocky and I wanted to see if I could do a race just hitting the nitrous, not even using the gas pedal. I could not. I failed. So there is some strategy about the game. And the computer opponents, they don't cheat, but they do have Mario Kart intelligence.
Yeah, they stay competitive, that's for sure.
Which means that if they're losing, they magically get faster to keep it competitive. And if you fall way back, they actually slow down. But it's always a competitive race. I hate that. I hate that type of AI. But you playing this game, I can't imagine how much fun this would be because I never got to play this 4-player back in the day. But I can't imagine how much fun this would have been. This would have been, in my opinion, this would have been unequal to Mario Kart or any other 4-player racing game. Plus, I love this style of racing game, the single screen where you have this bird's eye view of the track. And on this game, it works so well because of all of the obstacles that you have to be mindful of. The dirt piles and stuff really bounce your truck around, so you have to avoid them. Absolutely love this game. I think it is a great NES game. I also looked at it on the Spectrum. It does okay on the Spectrum. Colors are a bit of a disaster, but the gameplay itself is pretty good. I also took a look at this on the arcade, which of course is awesome. If you find this in an arcade, setting out in front of a shopping center or something, put a quarter in it, you're gonna love it. I also took a look at this on the Amiga, or I've played it for the Amiga, and the Amiga version of this is top notch.
Yeah, it is.
However, none of that matters if you want to play 4 players because you have to do it on the NES.
Which means I wouldn't be playing 4 players much because, listen, I'm not saying this game is such a dud that you should never play it. If you've got an NES, you got the 4 players, that's great. All I'm saying is it's perpetual. It's too much slower than what I'm used to. It's too much. It's just like I said. It feels like you're driving on gravel the whole time. And I played. I did not get to level 35, but I got up past level 14, 15. And I don't like the feel of it, man. Especially, and then when I made the big mistake was after I played this for a while, I'm like, maybe my memory's failing me. And I went over and played the arcade version, and it was as zippy and as fun as I remembered. Exactly the same.
Of course, the arcade version is better.
Yeah, but the home versions I played this are pretty similar to the arcade. That's the whole point. You're not supposed to make it different. You're supposed to make it similar. It's the point.
Well, I think it's certainly similar enough.
It's got a weird feel to it that I had trouble with, and like I said, the sound was grating. The sound on this was grating.
The sound was bad. This is a game where you're just going to put on some hard rock music in the background and pretty much ignore the sound because it is trash.
You know,
it's not trash. It's just it doesn't make sense.
I looked something up on this, and I wanted to get you. I don't even know if you paid attention to it. I looked to see who developed this, and according to what I saw, this was developed for the NES by Rare. Is that correct?
Well, it was technically developed by Leland Corporation and Rare.
Yeah.
And everyone else had a different developer. It was Graft Gold for all the other ports. So
right,
this was
not for the NES.
Correct.
And so therein lies something. So you've got a different developer, and then everything else, you know. And Graft Gold I'm familiar with from the Amiga. You know, they're up and down. But like I said, the Amiga version of this I enjoy a lot more. Frankly, but that's just me. You know, if you like
the Amiga version of this game, Aaron, got ranked the 35th best game of all time by Amiga Power.
Yeah.
The Spectrum version, which I mentioned, was voted number 47 in the Your Sinclair Reader's Top 100 Games of All Time.
Yeah.
And they're both of those are incredibly good versions. One other thing I want to mention is if you are going to look at the arcade version, the track pack is a must.
Yeah.
It has some of the best tracks. It really goes above and beyond. I believe it adds 8 additional tracks, and it has where you can play you could race as a truck or a dune buggy, which is kind of neat.
That is neat. I like that. Yeah.
And if you're looking for that in a home version, you got to go Super NES. I think it was the only one to get all 16 tracks. Most of these were limited to 8 tracks, and then some of the later console versions had 12. But the Super Nintendo has 16. So really, it's odd that depending on what you want out of the game, you have to get different versions. If you wanted 4-player action, you had to go Nintendo. If you wanted all the tracks, you had to go Super Nintendo. It's odd that they released it like that, but apparently it worked because this game, obviously, a fan favorite to many, many people out there. It did have a sequel, and it was Super Off-Road the Baja, and it went to a 3D perspective, kind of behind the cab. No, not the same game.
No.
Too different and not nearly as fun.
Yeah. I played that, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I played it well and agreed. I also didn't like it.
Don't mess with the formula, dude. You know what I mean?
When they lost the Iron Man Stewart license, they replaced his name with one of the designers' names, and they actually did that for all of the versions on all of the other cars, because all the other cars are named, the ones that you aren't playing, and they all have names of developers, and like Sam the Lightning Pal or David the Trucker Wise, that type of thing. So all those names that you see on the side of the cabinets or in manuals, depending on what version you're playing, are developers. I thought that was kind of neat.
That's an overstep. I don't like that.
Why?
Because don't name them. Don't put your names in there. That's so lame.
No, I completely disagree. That's not lame.
I don't like that. That's
because
lame.
If you name one guy, right?
Listen, you're telling me that, okay, do you know who Dave Iron Man Stewart is? Yes. Do I know who Bill from accounting is? No. I don't want his name on my freaking game. Give me the guy that made off-road racing famous, not some goof. I want the actual
guy. Aaron. They lost the license.
Well, tough. Just don't put a name. Don't put your producer name on there. That's crap.
Aaron, this was the boy. You know who you sound like right now? You sound like old EA and old Atari. We don't want them to know who made the game. We don't want them to know. Don't give them any credit. Boo for them.
Listen, if I lost the WWF license, right, I'm not going to replace Hulk Hogan with Aaron, Mr. Fantastic Dowdy. It's lame. Even if I worked on the game, it's an insult. No. No,
No.
it's not old man. I'm not saying not give the guys credit. There's giving the guys credit, and then there's putting the guys, the marquee guy. People are going to think this guy's a top shelf truck racer, and he's some geek who programmed the game. I don't want the geek.
I completely disagree.
Yeah. Frank Thomas,
believe
Big
that
Hurt
those
Baseball,
people-
nah. Get Frank Thomas out of there. Joe Smith, the Coffee Boys, Big Hurt Baseball. You can see, when you look at it that way, it gives you more perspective on it.
Yeah, it makes me think, wow, you are a true idiot instead of just kind of one.
Yeah, get this out
I
of
think
here.
this extra hour of sleep fried your brain.
No, I'm just saying, that's... I can't believe you're endorsing that. I don't endorse it, no. I don't like that.
100% endorse it. Anytime the developers can get their name in the game and it makes sense,
It doesn't make
for
sense.
it.
I agree, but that doesn't make sense. You know, someone mentioned Archie McLean's did it. He did. He did it for his like pool and stuff. That's fine, but he didn't. It wasn't called like he didn't do it for something that he isn't involved in. You know, that's different. This had a real guy's name on it. I don't like that. No, I don't like it. There
You're
you go.
insane. You're insane.
No.
Well, this ARG Presents, produced by some two guys. Don't try to figure out who we are. Screw all that.
What do you mean our names aren't
Give me
on
a
this
break.
show anywhere? Okay, from now on, this is Aaron Dowdy Presents ARG featuring Brent. How's that?
That would be awesome. I would love to be featured.
Yeah, I would love to have someone worth featuring talking. That's it, but we both have a
Well,
cross to bear.
Aaron, it's a two-man show, and we have to have you on there somewhere.
That's right.
So.
Someone's going to work the board. Did you get any reviews or money on anything on this?
No, I tried to get people to pay me for what I say, but they didn't do it.
Yeah, no kidding. Fair enough. Let's get this. This train's careening off the cliff. Are you done with Super Off-Road, Brent?
Yeah, I would highly recommend emulating this game, especially the arcade version, or if you're looking for a more console-friendly version with controllers, I would take a look at the Super Nintendo first. And of course, if you're wanting to play with 4 players, you got to go NES.
If you want to play the geriatric version that's slower than Christmas, play the NES version. Let's hit the wheel. Yeah. All right, man. Listen, we've got several additions to the wheel this week. Let's go over them, shall we? I got the wheel right
I'm kind
here.
of afraid if you're going to spin that thing, you're going to break your hip.
You got that right. I'm going to break your hip if you don't start that crap. So,
Wow, good comeback, man.
listen, we've added for the throwback piece this week, TurboGrafx 16, which I don't...
That's the retro rewind piece.
I'm sorry, I don't know all the vernacular that you installed here.
You named it.
We've got the PlayStation as our new piece. Controversial, Brent, the PlayStation, but it's here. It's here on the wheel. Yeah, you have a thought? What would you like to see this week, Brent?
Not PlayStation.
You know, why does everybody hate the PlayStation? There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't hate the PlayStation. It was a monumental, incredible jolt for gaming. I just don't want to play it.
All right, here we go. Here we go. I'm going to spin this sucker. Are you ready? Here we go. I want to play a little PlayStation. That sounds good to me. Since I'm the heel this week. I'm the heel on this show. The winner. The Amstrad Mega PC, Brent.
Oh, no.
The
Is that the console
The
Amstrad?
Amstrad. You put this on here, pal. What?
But you need to pull your mic back over.
What is your thoughts? I wouldn't say anything. What were your thoughts on the? Tell us what you know about the Amstrad Mega PC, Brent.
Well, it's certainly written on that little piece of paper. So
Right here it is.
that pretty much sums up my knowledge of it.
That's great. Another piece where you know anything, nothing about it. So that's gonna be something. It says here, and the people in the chat, no, it's the Amstrad PC with a Mega Drive built in. Oh, I believe I have seen
awesome.
one of these. So what does that mean? We're gonna be playing a Mega Drive game? Is that effectively what that means?
No, we're going to be reviewing the Amstrad Mega PC and picking a game from its incredible library, which I'm sure it has.
You're talking about, but they say this plays the Mega part of this is that it plays Mega Drive games. So are
If
we
that's what
playing
you
Mega
wanna
Drive
pick,
games?
Go right ahead.
Or are we playing Amstrad PC games?
We're playing anything that goes on that system.
So it's wide open here. We can play anything.
That's right.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, listen, before we shut this thing down, and we got to shut it down quick.
You're going to apologize?
No.
That's awful sweet
I'm not going to apologize
Aaron.
for being right.
I accept your apology.
On behalf of myself, I apologize for Brent. Anyway, I want to draw your attention ever forward to December 12th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be happening, Brent, as I MC the second meeting of the International Computer Club. It's going to be awesome.
Yes.
It's going to be a full house. We've got a slate of tons of info coming out. I've already gotten some of it in, I've got it primed up and ready to play. We got videos, we got presentations, Brent. We're going to have lots of fiery chat. I'm going to be just as fired up then as I am now. I'm going to go in there guns blazing. Get this international.
So you're going to insult all of the international.
Every single
club
one of them
in
a Don Rickles style beatdown right across the board. I'm an insult comic now. I don't know if I mentioned that to you. It's going to be great. No, I'm going to be peaceful because we're promoting international peace. So really,
you are an insult to comics.
Going in there guns blazing probably would not be a good thing for the international computer club. No, it's a friendly place where we're going to get together and talk about classic computers and retro video games. Hey, if you want to join us for this live, we will be broadcasting on Twitch. Again, this is next Saturday, December 12th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you are a member of the Amigos Discord, you are invited to participate via Zoom. We'd be more than happy to have you in there and get your nickels worth in. So feel free to head over to the Discord, and I will be posting the Zoom link there in the Discord if you want to join up with us. Now, but everyone's invited
Aaron,
to watch it.
I did not attend, but I watched the first International Computer Club, and I will have to say it was incredibly informative and very entertaining to watch. So I am looking forward. I unfortunately don't know how much I'm going to be able to catch of this one. It just doesn't mesh up with my schedule, but I'm definitely going to give it as much watch as I can because it is a heck of a good time.
That's right. We always have a good time with it. It's always good and fun. And I'm hoping, I'm not going to lie to you. I was a little nervous running the last one. It was complicated. And so I'm nervous again, but less nervous. I think it'll be fun. And what makes this thing go are the great people that we have participating. I can tell you right now, I think we've got 6 different things lined up. I'd like to bring this thing in a couple hours, but last time it ran about 3, so I would say it'll be 2 to 3 hours of hot international goodness. So, any parting thoughts before we take this thing to the house?
No, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week, Aaron. I think everyone should be looking forward to next week and for the Computer Club and the next Amigos and all the other good stuff that happens on our channel.
Absolutely, and we'd like to thank all the folks that showed up in chat today. We appreciate it. Again, we are now on live. Come watch us live every Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for more peace-loving goodwill exchange between me and my brother, the Brent. Until next week, we bid you a fond good day.
Round! Thanks for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Hello to our YouTube subscribers and our Twitch followers. A special thank you to Duncan Styles for our vector graphics and Bartbit for an amazing closing theme. Want to help keep ARG spinning for as little as $1 a month? You can do so at our new Patreon at patreon.com/ARG Presents. Just like these fine folks. Ram, WFetke, Rolo, Olaf Hope, Anthony Jarvis, Terry Howard, Gary Heather, John Schaller, The Slow Morris, Frodo NL, Steve Rasmussen, Bernhard Lucas, Chris Folds, Mitsuyama, Jason Warnes, Rob Black O'Hara, Andy Craig, Dave Velociraptor, Retro Allergy, Permsky, John Dykeman, Jerry Dennington, Z9K9, and Mr. B. Don't want to explain another credit card bill? That's okay too. You can help us out by leaving us a positive review on Spotify or Apple iTunes. Have an idea for a wheel piece? Email it to us at argpresents@mail.com.
We film live every Sunday, 10 a.m. EDT on Twitch. Hope to see you there.